I started this the next day after I dropped off.
Yeah.
I had to slow down. So I haven't seen
This is,
conditional use.
this one is a doozy, I'll tell you. You know, I've seen a lot of packets, but there's a lot of issues here. Yeah, would you say, Kevin?
Already been.
Yeah.
So that's where I was kind of curious. A lot of it's not to go over stuff like that. Some of the stuff you guys have already decided. I'm trying to figure out my own.
Yeah, we'll talk about it.
All right, 6 o'clock. Are we ready to start?
Ready?
Okay, let's call to order. Let's go with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Huboy, would you lead us, please? All right. Thank you. Can we get a roll call?
David Huboy,
Present?
Roxanne Stevens, Kevin Henderson,
Present.
Luke Corona.
Present.
Okay, can we get a verification of agenda posting?
The agenda was posted at City Hall Friday, August 19th at 4:20.
Okay, thank you. We need to do the approval of minutes. We have minutes from June 23rd, 2020, the regular Planning Commission meeting, and then we have minutes from August 4th, 2022, which is the study session. Can I get a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll second the motion. Can we have a roll call vote?
David Huboy,
Yes.
Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Luke Corona.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the public input. This is the time for anyone in the audience to speak on an item not on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. Speaker cards are available in the lobby and are to be completed and given to the Secretary, the Development Services Director, before speaking. When the Secretary calls your name and address for the record, and speak to the Planning Commission, When the Secretary calls your name and address for the record, I think there's an error in this paragraph, and speak to the Planning Commission. If you are joining us by Zoom, please click on the bottom of your screen to raise your hand. If you are joining us by Zoom using a phone, press *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes with a maximum of 30 minutes per subject. Please note that state law prohibits the Planning Commission from discussing or taking action on any item not on the agenda. All right, so we'll open the public hearing at, or the public comment at 6:03.
Thank you. The first speaker I have is Augie Dent.
Good evening, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Augie Dent, and I represent the Everglen tentative map. You may recall that this project was first presented for approval here 2 months ago at your June 23rd meeting. And the commission was generally in favor of the plan, but due to a question about density, voted to continue the item. At that time, there was discussion of a quick resolution and even coming back to a special meeting to avoid further delay. Over the past 2 months, I've been working cooperatively with staff. Thank you to Adriana and to Eva and Mark if he's on there from TV land. But anyway, in an effort to determine the minor revisions that we could make to our map in order to bring it into compliance with the current density regulations of the city. Simply put, what we intend to do is to retain the same street pattern, but reduce the lot count to the appropriate number of units. During the original June 23rd meeting, there was some discussion that 84 lots ought to be the maximum number. Since that time, I believe that I've demonstrated that 90 lots should be allowed. But whatever the number, 84 or 90 or something else, I'm just here tonight for confirmation that regardless of the action that the Planning Commission may initiate tonight with respect to a general plan amendment, that we can move forward with our project under the existing regulations and get the revisions made and come back for an approval in September. That's really what I'm hoping to get that confirmation from the Planning Commission, and I'm here to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay. Staff, are you able to make a comment?
Don't know if we can make comments, City Attorney?
You can comment. The commission won't be able to provide the confirmation that the speaker requested because that would essentially be voting on something that's not on the agenda. But staff can certainly comment if you, at your request.
All right, thank you.
I'm not sure. Is there a question from the commission?
So is the item going to be on the September agenda?
So we're working with the applicant to get an answer on how to amend their plans, and then pending that we have everything needed for the September agenda, we can certainly try to notice it.
Okay, thank you. Do we have another speaker?
Yes, the next speaker I have is Victor Gomez.
Honorable Vice Chair Henderson, members of the commission, good to see you this evening. Adriana, staff, thank you. Just really quick, wanted to follow up on Augie's comments. I'm here representing the applicant. We just want to make sure that we could come back to you with those revisions needed to make sure that we meet that density that is being interpreted. You know, we heard the comments in June about this, and I know you can't comment on that tonight. We don't expect you to, but what we would like is to be able to come back with variations of a map or maps that you could potentially vote on in the September meeting. I certainly think that's doable. We're not asking for some significant changes, but obviously to comply with the existing zoning code. So we don't want it, with all due respect, I'm sure you're going to have a very lively discussion on the zoning density, but we don't want to get caught up in that. We're prepared to move forward now, and we'd like to be on your September agenda. So thank you, and happy to answer any questions from staff afterward or the commission afterward as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Just in disclosure, I had a phone call with Mr. Gomez before the meeting.
I also had a phone call from Victor before the meeting.
Okay. So I think the issue was addressed by Eva's comment previously, so we'll move on to the next speaker.
Yes, the next speaker I have is Lester Wickman.
I'm Lester Wickman, and I own property in the county of San Benito at 90 El Dorado Drive. I attended your planning meeting here in June to learn of what to expect on the pre-zoning of a property next door to me. To my surprise, you barely discussed the pre-zoning of that property, but instead went into a discussion of annexing 15 acres of county property that includes my home on El Dorado, and 15 other half-acre and 1-acre properties that have been developed for close to a half a century. I and my county neighbors highly object not only to your intent, but also to your approach of not informing us of your intent of annexing us into the city. Since that meeting in June, I have discovered you've been talking about annexing our properties for at least a year, most likely longer, without notifying us of your intent. Whatever happened to your obligations of informing the public that you serve, like holding neighborhood meetings, informing us of your intent so that we can make informed decisions? When our properties were developed a half a century ago, the city limits of Hollister were over a mile away, and you had no way of offering us any services. Now that you have annexed the farmland almost completely around us, you are attempting to force us into the city with promises of services we don't want and don't need. Your requirements of connecting us to your now available sewer system is a financially forbiddable expense. We all have maintained our septic systems for a half a century and should be allowed to continue to do so under our grandfather clause without your outrageous cost. I have notified and informed all my neighbors who would be affected by this annexation, and we all agree that being converted to a city residence instead of county affects our personal way of life. I, for example, am a hobby farmer, and I bought my home in the county so that I can raise chickens, turkeys, and rabbits. As American citizens, we want to enjoy the freedom of a lifestyle of our choosing without you or anyone else coming along and changing the rules and telling us what we can and cannot do on our own properties. My county neighbors and I resist and resent your attempt of annexing us into the city and requiring us to connect to the city sewer.
Okay, thank you. We have,
Can I comment on that?
I think you're allowed to comment
Am I
briefly.
allowed to comment on that? If you recall on that, when that was on the agenda, it was decided, the resolution was that you would not have to annex. It was, those neighboring parcels were not required to annex to the city.
I can follow up on that. So in the minutes that they just adopted, the minutes, if you turn to page 7 of the Planning Commission minutes, at the top of the page, it says, Commissioner Huboy motioned to recommend that the City Council approve pre-zone 2021-2 for 3 parcels as proposed, not to include the surrounding parcels which were recommended by staff. Second by Commissioner Corona. Motion was unanimously carried by the Planning Commission 4-0.
Is there a list of those properties, of those 3? I mean, 'cause
That were the ones that were recommended by the city.
But there's more than 3 there.
The ones that there were, the ones the city are moving forward on is 3 parcels.
But there's a whole bunch more. There's not just 3. There are 6, right? Not at the end.
Well, there's 15 different properties that have been there for 30, 50 years.
Right, including my parents. Can you guys email us a list and make sure that we're on them and some kind of guarantee? I mean, obviously you have it in minutes, but
The minute,
can we
go
have
ahead,
it in
yeah.
writing and send us a copy of
Um,
each
ex-
of that?
Did you submit a speaker card, sir?
Oh, no, I'm just.
Okay.
I'd like to paraphrase these questions. I think I
Oh, if you'd like to speak and address the Planning Commission,
Yeah,
you'll
can
just
we,
need to
can we,
submit a speaker
if you need to
card.
speak, okay. Yeah, well, just withhold your comment until you're called. Thank you.
So when was this decided? That wasn't decided at the meeting that night. Nothing was said about it, not including the rest of the property that you guys were recommending.
Yeah, we were allowed to briefly comment, but we can't continue having a conversation about this. I encourage you to meet with staff.
To me, you made that decision after the meeting, and how are we supposed to know what's decided if it's done after the meeting?
Like I said, we can't comment any further. Can we go on to the next speaker?
Yeah. The next speaker is David Schulte. Schulte.
Can I ask that question now, why that exception for our properties wasn't included or notified, that we were notified in that?
I'm going to defer to the city attorney.
Yeah, if you'd like additional direction from staff, they can certainly comment. It's really up to you. So if you'd like staff to answer that question.
Okay, staff, could you answer?
Sure. So if it's okay with the city attorney, I'm going to try and briefly outline the annexation process because I think it'll be helpful.
Yeah, it's probably a good idea.
Okay, so the annexation process in the city of Hollister requires what's called an initiation of pre-zone, which starts at the council. And so the council has authorized the initiation of pre-zone for an applicant for 3 parcels. So that was Mr. Ted Intravia's 3 parcels off of Hillcrest and Los Altos Drive. And so staff has been working on that pre-zone. And then once the application for pre-zone is accepted after the initiation is authorized, then the pre-zone comes to the Planning Commission, which that item was on the Planning Commission agenda in June. And then the pre-zone gets a recommendation from the council, and that recommendation and application moves forward to the council. And ultimately, the council makes a direction to adopt the pre-zoning, and then it goes to what's called the LAFCO, which is the Local Agency Formation Commission. And that agency and board has the ultimate approval to change the boundaries. And so at the June meeting, staff recommended a boundary that included 15 parcels or 32 parcels. That was outside of what the actual application was for, which was for 3. The reason that if those 15 parcels were to be included or recommended by the Planning Commission, which they were not at the June meeting, we would have to go back for an initiation and kind of start that process from the beginning. And at that point, staff and LAFCO staff had offered to kind of start the neighborhood meeting process and talk to all of your neighbors in that area about the annexation process and what that would entail. I would clarify as well, because it's come up, that annexation does not require connection to the city services, but connection to city services requires annexation. So the applicant, and at the June meeting, the Planning Commission is recommending to the council only the pre-zoning of the 3 parcels that are the application. And that will be going forward to the council soon, actually on the September 6th
annexation
meeting.
of the parcels that include our neighborhood was never considered? Is that what you're saying on record?
Never considered officially. It was a recommendation of staff for the council to consider the authorization of the initiation of those parcels, but that has never been
And
authorized.
has that been now rejected and turned down, that suggestion?
That suggestion was not recommended by the Planning Commission, so
we
that,
have that on record, that's no
Yes.
longer under consideration?
yes, and that is what is in the minutes of the Planning
So we-
Commission's recommendation.
And we were never notified. I am wondering why that was never made a notification.
So the
Since
notification.
it was an item on someone's agenda, I would think.
So the notification of the recommendation for the initiation would have been just at the council, and if they had authorized that, then at that point, we would have had to communicate with all the property owners to see if they wanted to apply for the pre-zone. But the initiation was never authorized.
So this will be in the minutes tonight that those properties are no longer under any kind of annexation consideration?
It'll be in the recording. We don't take verbatim minutes, so our public notice will just have everyone's on the speaker card's names.
But it will be on public
But
record?
it is on the record in the recording, for certainly.
Okay. I had grown up in an area in Palo Alto for years. We were unincorporated, and the city wanted to come in and put in sewers and sidewalks and everything. We always were able to vote on it, so I was surprised that we weren't notified that it was even under consideration, that we hadn't been surveyed at all, so.
Yeah, so the way that the initiation process works, staff has never actually been authorized to initiate the pre-zoning process
Okay,
for
so
those properties.
We really don't have anything to worry about then.
You are okay.
Okay, just wanted to check, thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker is Rosario Urqueta.
I think he basically said everything. I guess I should say it over there. But so I'm new to
Yeah,
the
just
neighborhood.
get to the microphone first.
Yes.
And then please start the
So
timer.
my name is Rosario Urquieta. I'm new to the neighborhood, and the reason that I moved was basically because of the same thing that they want, right? Our own space. So to hear what you guys just said, it's great news. That's pretty much. So basically everything that Dave said, I concur with, and I just wanted to find out how can I get a copy of that, and how can we all of us get a copy? Is there a specific site where we can pull this information from?
The minutes are available in the agenda packet, which is available on the City of Hollister's planning website. You have to scroll far down,
Right.
but the links are there.
Perfect. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'll just briefly comment that these meetings are also recorded and can be viewed on YouTube. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker I have is Cassidy Canizaro.
Hi. Thank you for taking our time to hear our concerns. I'm on the same parcel. My home is 11 Eldorado Drive. I'm very glad to hear you guys' resolution, so I appreciate that. From now on, we'll definitely be paying attention, and then we'll look at that revised zoning and see kind of what it's like, and hopefully we can be part of the conversation for anything down the line next time. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
The next speaker I have is Luis Silvera.
Yeah, I'm with the same group. We live in the same place. You pretty much answered our questions, but we just had concern as we're all neighbors. So thank you for answering that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
The next speaker I have is Roberto Muniz.
I live at 100 Los Altos Drive, and I live with my mom, and I take care of her, and I'm with my neighbors, so I would just wish we can get some of the notices before, before the annexation or anything like that, so I could read them to my mom. And thanks for helping the neighbors. And that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker.
The next speaker I have is Sal Asensio. Apologies if I butchered that.
Hi, my name is Sal Asensio. Mostly I want to say thank you and sorry for, talking out of, also to try to, things change. You just never know. And I just wanted to mention that a good percentage, 4 or 5 of us that live in that area, we're all retired. I know at least 2 more households that are closing in on retirement. So, we're on fixed incomes. God bless America. We're doing okay. And from what I'm hearing, annexing doesn't necessarily mean we have to hook up the sewer. But just to make life simple, my vote, like all my neighbors, is, we don't want to be annexed. It's a great city, but, it's just, it's our preference. And God bless America that we can, speak our piece, and thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
The next speaker I have is, I believe this is Manuel Asensio.
Mostly just wanted to say the same thing as my neighbors. I'm glad we gave to a good resolution and everything. Of course, after my dad, everything happens, I'll be owning that house after him. So even when he stops bothering you guys, I'll be around here to bother you guys. So yeah, it is my preference as well to be in the county. All of us, we just like it that way. I'm glad that all my neighbors and everybody came out here to support each other. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thank you. Do we have another speaker?
I have no more speaker cards for public comment, and I have no hands raised in the virtual audience.
Okay, we'll close the public input at 6:24.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the public hearings, and item 1 on the agenda, minor subdivision 2018-3 extension, Allen Brookshire. The applicant is requesting a 1-year extension to minor subdivision approval 2018-3 to subdivide an approximately 4410 square foot lot into 3 separate lots with 2 lots. Lot 1 is proposed a 1,302 square foot lot 2 at 1,488 square feet, and lot 3 at 1,620 square feet. The project site is located at 221 Hawkins Street in the downtown mixed-use DMU zoning district, further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel Number 056-091-002. So do we have a staff report?
Yes, this will be Development Services Director Adriana Ortiz.
Minor subdivision 2018-3 for an extension of time. The applicant is Allen and Brookshire. The original approval
I'm sorry,
was.
can I stop you once, just real briefly?
Yeah.
We did receive a letter
Oh, yeah, from Ann Hall.
from Ann Hall. I
Yes,
think all of
it'll
us
be
did. Okay.
noted in the public comment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. So the original approval was September 27th, 2018, on Resolution 2018-36. That extended till expiration date of September 27th, 2020. There was an extension letter issued by, I believe, the then director on September 24th, 2020, which extended them to September 28th, 2022. On June 23rd, 2022, at the last Planning Commission meeting, there was an amendment to the conditions of approval to remove the requirement to underground the pole. That is a utility pole. This is the minor subdivision to divide it into 3 parcels. Next slide. Located on Hawkins Street, between East Street and San Benito. On the north is residential. To the east and west are existing commercial, and south of the parcel is existing residential. This is the parcel, the project site. This is a view for the frontage for lots 1 and 2, in between 2 commercial uses on Hawkins. Next slide. This is the currently closed alley access. It's the proposed access to Lot 3 on San Benito Street. Next slide. And this is the East Street alley access for Lot 3. It's, next slide. So according to the general plan, so since we removed the condition to underground the pole, it reduced the path of travel to 9.5 feet. The California Code of Regulations provides a minimum of 12-foot traffic lanes for one-way roads, which would be that alley. And so that is no longer compliant or with the general plan health and safety policy HS 1.1. So additional CEQA analysis is required before the subdivision could be implemented. Next slide. And then in accordance with Municipal Code 16.20.040, the frontage of the lots are not compliant with the minimum standards, which are 35 feet. Lot 1 and 2 are 21 and 24 feet, respectively. Lot 3, which faces the unnamed alley, is actually 45.13 feet. Next slide. Previously, there was a site and architectural approval with this when it was submitted in 2018. It was not extended with that original letter, and so that has since expired, but the intent of the applicant was to develop residential, single-family residential on each of those 3 lots. If proposed as a single-family residential, it would not be consistent with the municipal code as well, as the downtown mixed use does not allow for single-family residential. So if it wouldn't allow future single-family residential development if it continues forward. Next slide. Staff recommendation. So the Planning Commission can choose one of the following options. 1, adopt a resolution denying minor subdivision 2018-3, or the extension of time, sorry, I should have said that. 2, continue the hearing and provide applicant a 90-day extension. Direct staff to initiate a CEQA initial study and provide staff with the conditions of approval modified by the Planning Commission within that time frame. Or 3, continue the hearing and direct staff to provide additional information or clarification. Staff recommends the Planning Commission select option 1 for this item. You have any questions?
Yeah, thank you for the report. Any questions from the commission?
Mr. Vice Chair, I do have a procedural question. So when the applicant asks for additional time, or perhaps not, I was looking at the letter of extension by Mr. Swanson, and he referenced Municipal Code 17.24.060, which I looked through to just to get an understanding that subsequent to this body approving a project back in 2018, we approved the minor subdivision, which was incorrect. It was not in conformance with the general plan at that time. The circumstances that we're looking at now, and I do respect that decision, right or wrong, that we made back in 2018, but you do have the option then to look at it again and discover that there were deficiencies of the frontage and the general plan conformity. So that then, am I correct to say, that gives the director the option to revoke the original approval, or add conditions, or whatever it takes to correct a decision that was made back in 2018 that was incorrect?
So the original approval was made by the Planning Commission, and although the recommendation, it seems, was faulty or based on inaccurate information, perhaps, we don't really know exactly why it was recommended. But because the decision was made by the Planning Commission, the director wouldn't have the ability to reverse that decision or change it in any way. So it coming back to you now for an extension is the opportunity to do that.
I think
Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
you put it better than I did.
Oh, okay.
So you have an opportunity to renew it.
Well, okay, so when they resubmit for an extension, in the case for a tentative map or a minor subdivision, it automatically receives a 60-day extension. And that's to allow staff the time to review the project and send it out to the different departments. So we send it out to engineering and public works and fire and so on and so forth, and receive comments back, and we can change the conditions at that point. So we can make recommendations to change conditions and bring it back before the Planning Commission for approval for the extension with the added or removed conditions. And so the municipal code allows for that. Not all municipal codes do, but this one allows for us to make changes to the conditions. So at this point, we evaluate it to the best of our abilities and make recommendations based on its conformance to state and local regulations.
And then with that realization that that was out of conformity with the general plan, now as you go forward, one of the options, it would be subject to a CEQA initial study.
We would have to do an analysis to verify whether or not what the next course of action would be for CEQA. But yeah, it would have to be analyzed. Yeah. Yeah, the pool, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's the utility pole that brought it out of compliance. So let's say, for instance, that the utility pole was still one of the conditions. Then it would still be categorically exempt. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So what is the issue that's making it out of compliance with general plan? You said it is the utility pole, or it's not?
So it's the lot frontage requirement for the municipal code states that the frontage needs to be no less than 35 feet unless there's other circumstances, which this parcel does not meet those other circumstances. So the lots 1 and 2, I believe, are 21 and 24 feet at frontage, which does not meet the minimum 35 feet frontage.
Okay.
And then the other issue was the general plan with the downtown,
Yeah.
is it downtown, what's
So the downtown mixed use.
Mixed use
yeah.
doesn't allow single-family residential.
Yeah, which, I mean, they could do commercial, but the applicant previously had a site and architectural approval with this that was for residential. So, I mean, the intent originally was to build single-family residential on each lot. Yeah.
So, after this was approved by the planning commission, if the applicant had started right away, and they could have just done their project, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the commission? Okay, I think we can move on to the public comment at 6:36.
Thank you. I will note for the record that we received a public comment via email from Ann Hall, and a copy should have been provided to the commissioners, and there are some available in the chambers. And then I have Ann Hall in the virtual audience.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Ann.
Hi, this is Ann Hall. Planning commissioners, I appreciate you giving us a chance to talk about this. I did send an email with some more detailed background, but right now I'd just like to go over the items on the staff report. I do understand the staff is bound to point out to you any inconsistencies based on the most current interpretation of the zoning code. That is their job. You, as planning commission, have the, obligation to take in what they say, but also consider the bigger picture. And I'd really like you to look at the bigger picture in this case. The reasons behind their recommendation of denial on this project is that the project does not conform to the required frontage of 35 feet. Honestly, the first time I've ever even heard this brought up was in this staff report we got 2 days ago. This was not brought up when it was originally approved, and it originally went to planning commission with a recommendation of approval from staff. This wasn't something that got decided at planning commission. So it wasn't like we ignored a staff report that pointed this out 4 years ago. 4 years ago, this was not brought up. The other reason is this is inconsistent with general health and safety policy, and therefore requiring CEQA. Now, these two issues were brought up at the meeting in June when we requested the amendment to the tentative map. And the planning commission at that time agreed with the amendment. This requirement that they would have to follow up with CEQA was discussed at the time. And I don't know why that CEQA hasn't been being done since June. Here we are 2 months later, and it's still coming up as an issue. But my point is, this project, as Commissioner Henderson pointed out, if the applicant had built this 4 years ago, after he got an approval, all this would be moot. It would be a done deal. However, one of the requirements of him being able to build was that that alley be cleared. The alley is not within his control to clear. The city has to clear that alley. We've had multiple conversations with the city over the past 4 years about the fact that the alley is still not clear. And we have been given direction, most specifically in 2021, that the alley would be cleared and that Alan should proceed with his project. We've turned in improvement plans, paid all the fees. We've turned in a map, paid all the fees. We have proceeded in every way possible that we can, based on the conditions of approval, but we can go no further until the alley's cleared. And as of today, 4 years later, the alley is still not clear. So the reasons we're asking for an extension are because We
Ann, I need to stop you.
Mhm.
Your time's up. Sorry.
Now, Alan has 3 minutes, which I think he was going to cede to me. Can I continue?
No. So if you grant an additional 3 minutes to one speaker, then you would be required to grant the additional 3 minutes to every speaker. So, I mean, that's at your discretion, but something to keep in mind.
Okay.
That's very different than the direction I was given at the meeting 2 weeks ago from the city.
What's the consensus of the commission on having to give an additional time?
I say yes.
Okay.
Grant her the time.
Okay, then we'll allow additional time, additional 3 minutes, you said?
Yeah, so then going forward for the rest of the meeting, each speaker would be allotted 6 minutes.
Are we okay
And it's
with
at
that?
the chair's discretion. You don't have to have consensus from the entire
I see. Okay.
board.
We'll allow it.
I
So please
appreciate
continue.
that. And I just want to point out that the reason we need this extension is because we still do not have a resolution from the city on the alley. The alley is still occupied. We can't do construction there. We can't go forward. And the delay is not on part of the applicant. Our improvement plans were turned in a year ago. They've gone through the process. The map was turned in a year ago. We've gone through the process. And we've asked multiple times over the course of the past 4 years, what is the status of the alley? When can we move forward with this project? We've received conflicting direction from the city, and we've received conflicting direction even most recently. Now, the other thing I want to point out is, which Ms. Ortiz mentioned, there is a CUP and a site architectural approval associated with this, and those have also expired. And we have put in a request for an extension on those, which was not brought to the meeting tonight, still needs to come to the meeting. I do request, one, that you grant approval of this extension, and if there is additional sequel work that needs to be done, that all the approvals come back in one motion to the next meeting with that CEQA, including the site and architectural, including the CUP, so we can get this done, so we can move forward based on the approval we received going through the city process and following every direction in 2018. Do you have any questions for me?
And did you say that you have working drawings that were prepared for the project?
Yes, we delayed turning those drawings in while we were waiting on the alley. We waited almost 2 years for the city to clear the alley, and finally the city told us to turn them in. So yes, we've prepared improvement plans, which have been reviewed and approved with the exception of the pole. The applicant has prepared building plans, and we've prepared a map, which has been approved.
Thank you, Ann.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ann, you are okay with the 90-day extension, option 2, which is showing?
I understand that they want 90 days to do the CEQA. I would request, one, that it really be 90 days and that it include the site architectural and the CUP extension as part of that package.
Okay.
That would be November's planning commission meeting by my estimate.
Okay. So any more comments, Ann? You have 30 seconds.
No, thank you for allowing me the time.
Okay, thank you. Do we have another speaker?
Yes, Alan Brookshire.
Alan Brookshire, the owner of 221 Hawkins. I'm just, reiterate everything that Ann said. This has been to say this has been a difficult process is an understatement of the year. And this was a year ago that we turned in improvement plans, and I was trying to move forward. 1 year ago, and the current city attorney at that time put a stop to it and said, well, the alley's not going to be open now after all. We're going to offer the alley for sale to the people in the front that are opposing this, and the piece behind my project, they were going to offer me that piece of the alley as well. Well, then this guy is now no longer with us. The city attorney has been replaced. So this was a year ago that I was trying to move forward. I was at this point. And here we are a year later, and it's just been a difficult process, and I'd like to move forward. And I'm not asking for anything. I'm just asking for what the city gave me 3 years ago, so we can get this lot downtown that's blight, and get something on it.
Mr. Brookshire, when you say the alley needs to be cleared, is it a fence? What other?
I think they got a gate in front of it.
There?
I'm not sure what else is back there behind that gate. And I want to reiterate one thing Ann said about this lot frontage. We knew nothing about that. All of a sudden, that's on the staff report out of nowhere, that the lot frontage was an issue. Is that fair to me that this gets brought up at this point? And the alley thing, I don't know what to say about it anymore. Why can't I just move forward with my project the way it was approved 3 years ago? Okay. Any more questions?
Thank you. That's my only question.
Do we have another speaker?
I have no more speaker cards. Let me just check this. And I have no more hands in the virtual audience.
Okay, we'll close the public comment at 6:46.
Is there someone from Public Works that can address this issue about the alley and the debate that has gone for a long time, whether or not it can be opened or closed, or what the issues are?
Unfortunately, our city engineer is on vacation this week, so I don't have anyone from Public Works on the line. I know that the previous city attorney was working with the applicant, as they indicated, in the last year or so, to try and figure out how to close the alley. And I know that there was different direction and kind of potentially not opening it and opening it, but unfortunately I wasn't privy to those actual conversations.
Well, Mr. Vice Chair, I think you raised a good point there. I mean, if this didn't have all these difficulty factors, they could have conceivably have built these 3 units, and it would have been said and done, even though, looking back on it, there was nonconformity issues with the frontage, with the zoning ordinance, and also general plan allowing the residential units. But unfortunately, this issue with the alley, the power pole, have created some stumbling blocks as dragging this out. I think it needs to be brought out is that the applicant has gone through quite a bit of expense, hiring the engineers, preparing the drawings, paying the city fees. So of these 3 options, I would be in favor of, I guess it would be option 2. But now, knowing that it no longer qualifies for this level 15, where if everything was in conformance, it wouldn't need to go through a CEQA review. But now, knowing that we have these issues with the frontage and the general plan conformity, I think I would be in favor of the initial study for the CEQA and also granting the additional time, 90-day extension.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I'd just like to say that I think the applicant's been acting in good faith, trying to comply with pretty much all of the conditional use that we've been putting forward, and to continue to hold them up is going to be a big injustice. We should try to help move forward and get them going, because as you pointed out, they could have already built already, but they didn't.
Okay. Just one comment I have is that I know it's zoned for downtown mixed use, but the location itself is not, I don't think it's matches the, I mean, if it was closer to the actual downtown, you know, I would consider it, but the fact that it's behind a 7-Eleven and between another store, which don't have residents in them, they're businesses, I don't think I don't consider that an issue. Any other comments from the commission?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Well, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion. I'm going to make a motion that we, for minor subdivision 2018-3, that we approve a continuance of time to provide the applicant a 90-day extension, direct staff to initiate a CEQA initial study, and provide staff with findings to draft a resolution approving MS 2018 minor subdivision 2018-3 with conditions of approval modified by the Planning Commission that within that time frame.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call vote.
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to agenda item 2, Site and Architectural Review 2022-2, Ken Turgan. The applicant is requesting site and architectural review approval for the construction of a 30,010 square foot industrial building and related improvements in the light industrial M1 zoning district. The project is located at 2300 Burt Drive, north of Fallon Road, near the corner of Burt Drive and Apollo Way. Further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel Number 051-152-002, CEQA categorically exempt. Can we get a staff report?
No. Yes, this will be Erica Fraser.
Good evening. The item before you tonight is a site and architectural review for a new industrial building located at 2300 Burt Drive. The project site is located within an existing developed area. As you can see on the slide in front of you, the project site would be surrounded on all sides by industrial development, and there are plans for more industrial development in the area in the future. The applicant is requesting approval of a 30,010 square foot industrial building on a 2.096 acre lot. There are 2 street frontages on this property. One is Apollo Way, the second is Burt Drive. Access into the site will be provided either by Apollo Way or by Burt Drive. The building will be set back a minimum of 35 feet 10 inches from Burt Drive. That will allow for a landscape planter. And on Apollo Way, it will be set back a minimum of 40 feet, obviously based on the siting, the setback gets larger, and that will allow for another landscape buffer on that street. The proposal before you today does not include any tenants, so it's just a shell building. So in reviewing parking for the site, staff took the highest parking requirement that would be required in light industrial, and that is 1 parking space for every 400 square feet. They are required to have 75 parking stalls per the municipal code per the municipal code, and they will provide 80, so they'll actually have a surplus of 5. That 5 can be used for any interior modification that needs to be done, if a different use wanted to come in and has company trucks, or they're gonna increase office space. There is a condition of approval that was added into the conditions related to the requiring any future tenants to check with the city first so that we can make sure there is adequate parking before they submit for tenant improvements or occupy the space. Oh, sorry. This is the Apollo Way elevation. This is the main elevation of the building. The building will be 36 feet tall, which is consistent with the height requirements for the industrial zoning district, and will be 247 feet in length. The building has a base, an identifiable base with a body, which will be painted different colors, and the color materials board was also included as an exhibit to the resolution. In order to break up the massing of the building, the applicant's proposing to construct 3 metal panels, 2 over the main entrances and 1 in the center. There's also an identifiable entrance into each tenant space within the building, as you can see on the drawing on the left and right side. Another architectural detail the applicant is proposing to include are 2 landscape trellises or green screens on this elevation. They would be constructing the trellis and then allowing vines to grow up to provide a different architectural element for the building. Staff did include a condition of approval in tonight's resolution related to the growth and maintenance and size of those plants to ensure that the green screen does what it's intended to do in the future and continuing on with the life of the building. Burt Drive is the second elevation that faces a street, so will be visible. In this case, the applicant has wrapped around the metal panels for detailing to break up the massing of the building, and then on the right side you can see where they added it in again to provide more architectural detailing on this elevation, which is required by the zoning ordinance because it is facing a street. Again, they're also proposing the green screen, trellis, and that condition of approval that I just discussed would also apply to that one as well. This is the landscaping plan for the building. As you can see, there is a number of street trees facing Burt Drive and Apollo Way. Those trees the proposed trees are on the city's approved street tree list, and they're spaced according to the requirements of the zoning ordinance. They are also proposing plants behind the street trees, plants, shrubs, trees, to provide a 5-foot height barrier to screen views of that parking lot. And then, as you can see, there are some trees scattered throughout the parking lot area to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. A total of 20.2% of the site will be landscaped, which exceeds the zoning ordinance requirements of 10%. So the proposed project is consistent with the setbacks and the height limit for buildings in the light industrial zoning district. The project is consistent with the requirements for landscaping in the zoning ordinance. The project will actually have a surplus of 5 parking stalls. The building design meets the requirements of the zoning ordinance, and it's well designed in and of itself and also in relation to the surrounding area. The project is consistent with the goals and policies of the general plan, and pursuant to Class 32 of CEQA, this project is exempt from further CEQA review because it is an infill development. Staff is recommending that you adopt a resolution approving site and architectural review 2022-2, subject to the conditions of approval in the resolution.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions from the commission for staff?
I have a question, Mr. Vice Chair, on condition 38 regarding mechanical equipment.
Yes.
If the mechanical equipment is installed on the roof, will that roof screens be approved administratively then through the planning?
The intent on the, hold on. You can see the dashed line on the bottom. That's yeah.
There's really
That
not
one.
a lot of
So they have
parapet
room.
there.
Yeah, so they have room. When they submit their building permit plans, they have to demonstrate to staff that we will not see the HVAC.
Right.
If for some reason we can, they'll have to propose some screening that we'll then look at as a minor modification to their approval.
Right, and then you'll be looking at it, because condition number 38 doesn't indicate the approval process of the roof screens.
So, do you mean 36?
Is 38, is I on the PC resolution? 30.
36. No, it's not that one. There's another one. 17.
Oh, I look at the wrong one.
It's okay. 17.
Okay. Somehow I got, okay, well, whatever the number is, yeah, so it will be approved then.
Yeah, it'd be
Because it
staff.
does affect the appearance of the building. you
It
know,
does.
It
and
does,
We would make sure any proposed screening
right.
fits in with the design of the building. We wouldn't allow something that didn't match or look
Right,
architecturally compatible.
okay, okay. That's the only question I had. Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, we can move on to the public hearing at 7 o'clock. Do we have any speakers?
I have no speaker cards, and I have no hands raised in the virtual audience.
Okay, we'll close the public comment at 7:01. All right, any comments from the commission?
One of the things that I look for, Mr. Vice Chair, is on the elevations, the south elevation, the north elevation is relatively plain, but it's obscured from viewing. But the south elevation has the articulation. I like to see it's nice to have that they put a lot of glazing for daylighting, for sustainability. I do commend the applicant regarding that. I like to see a lot of glazing facing south. So I think in terms of the aesthetics are fine. Was there you mentioned a parking, was there a condition that you added regarding the parking?
There is. Want me to read it?
You can just give me the number of that condition. As the landscaping too, I think is good. It's over the requirement. Is that correct, Armando? Is that over the requirement of landscaping? Looks like they have quite a bit of landscaping there.
That would be based on Erica's assessment.
Almost double.
So the one related to future tenants is condition of approval number 23.
23, okay. And regarding the landscaping, so they exceeded the requirement by quite a bit.
They did.
Okay.
Yeah, they're at 20 and they're required to have 10.
Mm-hmm. All right. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Huboy. Any other further comments? Commissioner Kimona, did you have any comments? Okay. Okay. I don't have any comments. Do we have a motion?
I'll go ahead and make the motion. Or Luke, did you want to make your first motion?
If I could.
Absolutely.
You beat me to it. This one's a slam dunk.
Yeah, you're right.
So I would like to adopt a resolution approving SNA 2022-2, subject to the conditions of approval. Attachment 1.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, can we have a roll call vote?
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
And I would just note one thing for the record. This is going to be resolution 2022-8. We haven't had a resolution number in a minute. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Do we need to re-say it or?
No.
Okay. Just checking.
I think Eva stating it for the record is adequate.
Okay,
and
thank
the
you.
intent
I
is
guess
clear.
with these items, there's always a PC resolution. So when you make the motion, you approve the PC resolution, whatever that number is, and adopt, in this case, adopt the site and architectural review. Did a good job there.
Okay, thank you. We can move on to agenda item 3, site and architectural review 2021-5. Before I go further, I need to disclose that I had a phone call earlier today with the Orozco Group, who's the applicant for items 3 and 4.
I also did have a phone call, Mr. Vice Chair,
Okay.
from the Orozco Group, for information only.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll restate agenda item 3, site and architectural review 2021-5. Felipe 9 LLC. The applicant is requesting site and architectural review approval for the construction of a 337,710 square foot greenhouse building for cannabis cultivation, distribution, and manufacturing in the North Gateway, NG zoning district. The project is located at 773 San Felipe Road, east of San Felipe Road, north of North Chapel Road, further identified as San Benito County Assessor parcel numbers 051-100-035 and 051-100-036 and 051-100-046. CEQA mitigated negative declaration. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. This one will be me. So this item before you tonight is Site and Architectural Review 2021-5. It is for the construction of 337,710 square foot building for future cannabis cultivation uses, as well as a small security office and the related improvements on a proposed 12.22 acre parcel, which would be created through a lot line adjustment between 3 existing parcels, as well as the right-of-way of Kirkpatrick Drive. The property is zoned North Gateway Commercial, and it is located at 773 San Felipe Road. This project site dimension, so this is kind of the site area as well as that lot line adjustment. So our project site proposal is this line here outlined in yellow, and then there's some amended land here. And some affected parcels, numbers 2 here, Kirkpatrick Drive, parcel A and B, I think, are unaffected, and then this small parcel here on the side would be created by the lot line adjustment. The proposed project site dimensions exceed all of the minimum dimensions in 1708-020 of the zoning ordinance for lot size and depth and width. However, there is a requirement for a minimum of 50 feet of lot frontage on public roads within the North Gateway zoning district. However, the lot line adjustment that's proposed, these parcels don't have enough frontage as they are. So they're what's called existing non-conforming. And so part of the recommendation tonight and the findings that the Planning Commission will have to make as part of this project is that while these parcels are non-conforming, the proposed lot line adjustment isn't going to affect the reason that these parcels are non-conforming. So it's an adjustment of the lines in between the parcels, but it doesn't create or take away any of the frontage or affect the width on some of the narrower parcels. So staff believes that the Planning Commission can make that finding, but it is something, so it will be creating new parcel lines, all of which are non-conforming and will remain non-conforming after that lot line adjustment. The proposed site plan and development will be accessed through a shared easement across the property to the west of the project site, which is also currently addressed as 773 San Felipe Road. So again, it doesn't have direct frontage, but it will have a shared access agreement through this site. That other site did receive entitlements to construct and operate a cannabis dispensary. However, those entitlements did expire on April 11, 2021. So currently this is an undeveloped site with no entitlement approvals at this time. The project before you tonight, therefore, is conditioned to improve that access driveway to make sure that they have access to their proposed site, as well as improve the San Felipe Road frontage up to the standards of the San Felipe beautification plan and plan line that was recently adopted by the City Council. So that'll be part of their frontage improvements. The project has no direct pedestrian access from the right-of-way. It's because it's proposed to ultimately be a cannabis use. It's going to be located behind security fencing and gates, and the only access point is through that proposed vehicular driveway. There's also no proposed bicycle parking spaces located on this plan at this time. The building is located, so its primary entrance is on the south side of the site, and parking is located to the west and south. The circulation and everything has been reviewed by our fire department and our engineering department for access. The elevations, the main elevation is the south elevation, again, containing the front access. The building is proposed to be 19 foot 2 inches at its maximum height, which is well within the 50 feet allowed in the North Gateway. One of the items of the facade is that it is a greenhouse, so it's relatively monotonous and consistent in its design. It just has a series of roll-up doors, man doors on each of the elevations, and is going to have a polycarbonate panel siding throughout with a tempered glass roof for the greenhouse. The elevations, all of the elevations, again, going back to the fact that the site has no frontage, they don't have any frontage on a public road, so it's not visible from the public right-of-way. And again, they are proposing security fencing, so there is limited visibility of this building. So similar to the previous item, if there's no visibility from the right-of-way, the Planning Commission can make a finding that the elevations don't necessarily need to be enhanced architecturally. This is a proposed rendering from San Felipe Road. Again, what you're seeing in this is the access driveway and this undeveloped but potentially developable parcel that's actually located on the San Felipe frontage road. And then the proposed project is behind this fence and further back from the right-of-way. Here again is the site plan. There's a trash enclosures and loading spaces located on the south side near the entrance of the building, and there's another trash enclosure proposed on the northeast corner of the building. With regard to parking, this proposed use is a little bit unique because it is a cannabis cultivation proposed use, so it's not something that's listed in our land use type parking table in the municipal code. There is a allowance for actually the director to make a decision on the parking. However, because this is before the Planning Commission tonight, the Planning Commission would be making a recommendation on the parking ratio. The closest items in our land use types to cannabis cultivation are general industrial manufacturing, warehousing, and research and development. I've done the calculations for this 337,000 square feet building for each of those three types, and the lowest would be warehousing, which a warehouse of this size would require 337 vehicle parking spaces. The project has proposed 132. So the proposed parking ratio for this project, if the Planning Commission believes that this would be sufficient, would be about one space for 2,558 square feet of gross floor area. And then this project, again, is proposing landscaping inside of their fence around the entire perimeter of the site. They are exceeding the 5% minimum landscape coverage required in the North Gateway zoning district. They have about 14% proposed, and there are conditions, which are standard conditions, requiring water efficient landscaping And then the review of those applications, because some of the spacing and things are not identified on the plans, is that they'll be consistent with all of our landscaping requirements in the code. As mentioned in the architecture review, 2 of our land use policies, 11.1 and 11.2 of the general plan, do require variation of architecture and different roof lines and things like that. However, as mentioned, because of the setback and the lack of frontage, the building will be relatively unviewable from the public right-of-way. So the Planning Commission may find, and that's included in your resolution tonight, if you agree, that the project doesn't need to enhance the elevations further than proposed to meet those land use policies, because it isn't visible. So the architecture won't be affecting the aesthetics of the city or the aesthetics of the public view. And then, as conditioned and as mentioned, the project it doesn't have any direct access to the right-of-way, so it doesn't have any street network or bicycle pedestrian infrastructure specifically on site. However, the frontage improvements are going to contribute to that San Felipe beautification plan, which is a multimodal plan to improve pedestrian and other vehicle transit circulation in the area. So with those frontage improvements, we do believe that it's helping to contribute to the multimodal street infrastructure network, consistent with these 4 policies on the screen: 4.1, 4.2, and 4.4 of land use, as well as 2.3 of circulation. Again, the proposal for 132 parking spaces doesn't fall neatly into any of our parking land use categories. However, if the Planning Commission does find that they believe that 132 is sufficient for this type of use, it is a potentially not as intense of a staffing as a warehouse use, but we don't have that information from the applicant on potential staff to be able to provide more details. But this would be 1 parking space for 2,558 square feet of gross floor area for this type of use. Again, landscaping will be consistent with the zoning ordinance. And then the Planning Commission would need to find also that the lot line adjustment doesn't exacerbate the nonconformity of each of the lots that are affected, including the subject site. And then the project is consistent. There was a mitigated negative declaration prepared for a different project called the Felipe 9 project, and an addendum to that M&D was prepared analyzing this project proposal, which is a slightly larger greenhouse. That other project had a subdivision and 2 greenhouses. And it was found to be consistent and no additional mitigation was needed. So this is consistent with that M&D. With that, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution, and this would be 2022-9, approving Site and Architectural Review 2021-5, subject to the findings and conditions contained in the draft resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that report. Any questions for staff from the commission?
Mr. Vice Chair, I do have a question. So looking at the site plan, it looks like San Benito of the San Benito?
San Felipe.
San Felipe, excuse me. It's unimproved there? There's no sidewalk?
I believe it is unimproved. This is the San Felipe frontage road.
Mm-hmm. So the beautification, your beautification plan, would that include for the applicant to put in a sidewalk and gutter?
So the ultimate what needs to be improved will be decided by the city engineer and the engineering department as part of their improvement plans.
Mm-hmm.
But the San Felipe beautification plan line that was adopted by the city council takes into consideration both San Felipe Road itself as well as the frontage road. And that plan line starts at Highway 25 and San Felipe Road and extends all the way up to 156 and San Felipe. So there is an adopted plan line with adopted improvements for that entire stretch of road now.
Because currently, as it is now, there's no public there's no public street or public sidewalk.
Mm-hmm.
So because I noticed they would need, if a sidewalk is installed, they would need to include an accessible route from the project building to the sidewalk.
Yeah, so
and that might be a little difficult. I'm sure it can be done, but somehow would have to traverse across the unapproved property to San Felipe.
Yeah, so there might have to be some deferred improvement agreement with the engineering department, but as written, it's as up to the city engineer,
Right.
and we'd like to make sure that we're improving where improvements are logical and necessary for development. Definitely.
Yeah. So I just wanted to, for the applicant, that if that doesn't occur, then they're gonna want to see an accessible route. That was my only question.
Okay. Thank you. So there's no tenant for this right now. Will there be any other reviews or anything that happen if for a proposed tenant?
So we don't have anything in our draft staff report. The Planning Commission can certainly add a condition. We could potentially steal the language of the previous one. However, what we would be looking for as staff when a tenant did come in here is that we're meeting, it would have to be because of the parking ratio issue. So if the Planning Commission adopts this parking ratio, any of our other potential North Gateway uses that could go in this building, they'd definitely have to meet parking, and this is a very low ratio. So it's unlikely that something like a big commercial center, this is a commercial zone, could come in without making some relatively major site plan amendments. Does that make any sense? So it has to be a cultivation use if the Planning Commission makes that finding on the parking, but we don't have a cultivation use specific tenant at this time, but it would have to be one.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Sorry. We'll move on to the public comment section at 7:21. Do we have any speakers?
I do. The first speaker will be Patrick Orozco. Jennifer, City Attorney, is it still 6 minutes or was that just that one item?
It's for the whole meeting.
For the whole meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll have 6 minutes.
Good evening, Commissioners. It's nice to be back. It's been a while. My name is Patrick Orozco of the Orozco Group. We were here last back in 2019. A little bit of history on this particular project. The project was approved. We've had unanimous approvals from your predecessors and the council at every turn, so we're very thankful of that. The prior project of 220,000 square feet was taken to market. We found a tenant in January of 2021. The tenant had indicated that in order to prioritize this site over another deal that they were looking at, we needed to increase the square footage to the condition that is shown here. We scrambled to do so, went through an amendment to the CEQA documentation, and unfortunately it took a little too long and we lost the tenant. But at that point in time, I'd already committed to buying the property and advanced to application. So it's taken a little longer than we had hoped, but I'm pleased to be here before you this evening. We've had extensive conversations with staff. The challenge we've run into now that we have an opportunity to chat is that some of the policies of the city have changed since the project was approved, and it's been a struggle a bit to reconcile where our project relied on prior commitments of the city, department heads, other commissioners and the council, with respect to some terms that were not being required of us, that were net new. In some cases, the duration of review of our site triggered new issues because the process took so long. All that being said, I want to alert you to those issues. It would be helpful from the private side for the Planning Commission and council to make a policy decision as to whether or not prior approved projects be allowed to continue with amendments on the basis of those previously existing conditions, or if a project that has previously been approved and is going in for an amendment needs to be brought into full compliance. And I think that was the one issue that we weren't sure where the city stood. And the staff is all trying to do a very thorough job, which they have. Our request of the application this evening, having gone through the 160 conditions, is to stick to the conditions that we've discussed in over the many months. One of those conditions includes undergrounding the stormwater management to bring it into compliance. It's at a cost about $650,000 net add over what was approved. One of the conditions that I see here that I'd like to ask for consideration of is the issue of the frontage improvements. That was not something that had been discussed and caught us a bit off guard when we received the staff report Monday night. There is a good solution, and it was a prior condition of approval. That is the deferred improvement agreement. So I have the prior conditions of approval on page, may I hand these off? On page 13 and 14, items 53, conditions 53 and 58 addressed the frontage improvements. And the logic behind a deferred improvement agreement, whether it's ADA or just the basic utility of a sidewalk from nowhere to nowhere, that's bookended on both sides by unimproved areas, is that we be allowed to defer those improvements until such time as they have connectivity and utility. We're in agreement with making those improvements at that point in time. So to the extent that item 96, which pertains, or condition of approval 96, which pertains to frontage improvements, can be replaced.
You have 1 minute left.
With condition number 53, the deferred improvement agreement from the prior conditions of approval, and condition 58, which describes the right in, right out improvement. That would be a practical compromise between what the city's request is and what seems plausible. Aside from that, I'm happy to move this thing forward and happy to answer any questions you might have.
I have a question, Patrick. In your familiarity with projects of this type, we were talking about the parking ratio, one stall for like 2,500 square feet or whatever. What in your familiarity with how many employees would you anticipate would be?
Yeah, very good question. So this specific project was engineered to a already operating tenant's actual staff needs. The tenant that was proposed for this site is my tenant in Salinas in another facility. So we scaled the operations up, added a 20% margin of error, and during the peak time when they have the maximum number of people in the facility, those two numbers are what created the parking field. And that original design was before we added the parking that is in the northwest corner of the site. That area was previously proposed for storm drain detention, so we've subsequently added, I don't know, I guess 50 parking spaces. You are, Eva is correct insofar as this is really a use-specific building, which has what is effectively a replacement for row crops that is rows and rows of plants that do not have a intensive requirement in terms of handling or staff. So the parking that's provided is probably 50% more than what our actual tenant, who's been operating for 6 years in a facility of about 225,000 square feet, which is somewhat analogous, has
How
needed.
many employees?
I think that the
operation?
peak number of employees that they've ever had on site is about 80. And that's in a situation where they are growing, processing, which involves, harvesting and trimming and drying. That's if everyone is there at the same time.
And you say the square footage of that facility is what, 225,000, did you say?
Right. And the differential between this particular project and that is that the net additional square footage is for space for plants. So this facility was proposed to be a more efficient solution for, in part, a labor problem, and effectively use less labor per square foot, and hence the statement that there's way more parking than we'll actually need.
Okay. Thank you.
Are you comfortable with the conditions of approval regarding stormwater management?
No. The honest answer is I'm not, but we've already agreed to it, and so I'll stick to my agreement. The reality is it presents a economic challenge for us, but in discussing the issue over the period of a year, it was made clear that economic infeasibility was not a criteria that would allow us any exception to the rule. And so that ship in my book has sailed, and we're going to go ahead and underground the stormwater, despite my discomfort.
So were there any changes in the conditions of approval from previously to now?
There were quite a few. Quite honestly, we were overwhelmed when we saw 160 new conditions of approval that bore little relevance to the original conditions of approval in terms of how they were identified. The prior plan, I believe, had about 70. But I want to get this thing approved. And so what you saw me doing in the back was double checking whether or not there was anything in here that was really a deal breaker. So I've just skimmed them again, and I would rather advance the project with asking consideration for the deferred improvement agreement than face the economic realities of additional delays. So as to what's written, we will underground the storm drain. I was concerned that the overhead utility requirement is an unnecessary cost item because it's kind of the same thing. If the utilities are on both sides of my property and we're mid-block, I don't even own the frontage, is it really going to make a material improvement to spend money to put it underneath the ground? I don't like it, but I found it in the original conditions of approval, so we'll stick to it. It's fair to hold us to that standard. So, in a long-winded answer, it's good enough.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Mr. Orozco?
So then, there are 160 conditions of approval that a lot of those conditions were added from your approval that you had before. Are you saying then of the 160 conditions, the one that you would you're proposing or asking for consideration on is the frontage improvements to be deferred?
Yeah, and maybe we're not in disagreement. Ava brought up the possibility of deferred improvements agreement, and that was the solution that had been negotiated, and so it was reassuring to hear that was a possibility. My primary concern with that particular condition is that it wasn't something that we had had any discussions about in the last year. And so it caught us off guard.
Any other questions? Okay. Do we have another speaker?
Yes. Gary Coates. And you'll have
Good
6
evening,
minutes.
Mr. Chair, well, actually, Mr. Vice Chair and members of the commission. Gary Coates here, also on behalf of Felipe 9. Patrick took away everything I wanted to say, so I don't have a lot more to add to it. Just a couple things, if I may. In response, Mr. Huboy, to your question about staffing, when we did the environmental document, we researched not only the existing, but others, and it was between 65 and 80 people per shift max that would occur at the site. So, and that's a fairly common number for the industry standards. So we provided almost double that number of spaces in order to require parking. And the fact that the majority of the building is grow area, you don't have a lot of the people that you would normally have in an industrial assembly plant or other such facilities. So hopefully that answers the question with respect to the number of people. The other one, as Patrick had mentioned, the deferred improvement agreement, that is something that was in the original conditions that we did negotiate. In addition to that, the front building, which is AMBAM, the Monterey Bay Area Alternative Medicine Site, which is the service sale area for cannabis facilities, they have a deferred improvement agreement approach also as part of their approval. So this would be consistent with that, to continue that same requirement, that when and if the city has the whole thing or a plan that would be cohesive that would go in, they would agree, as well as Mr. Roscoe has just said, they would as well. So
Where are they located in relation to
they're
your
the
project?
front piece that this property goes through to access onto San Felipe. They front San Felipe.
Okay.
And so the deferred would then be consistent with respect to both properties. That would have a same agreement that would then allow for the calling of it at any time the city would deem it appropriate. So that's all I really had to add to it. Unless there are any questions that you had or any information I could provide, I'd be happy to do so.
Okay. Good.
Do we have another speaker?
I have no more speaker cards and no hands in the virtual audience.
Okay, thank you. We'll close the public comment at 7:37.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, some of these issues that were raised, the frontage, with nonconformity of the sites, I don't have any issue with the frontage, because they normally require 50 feet. The aesthetics, you have the fence. I actually kind of like the way the greenhouses look. I kind of like that soldier look. It's just, you got screens, you've got polycarbonate. You could put a focal point there, but like a tower or something. But I don't see the point of that. It's an agricultural setting. They're using it to grow, and you see greenhouses, and I think that in this context, I don't see any issues with the aesthetics. As far as the deferred agreement for the frontage improvements, I'd like to kind of leave that open with further discussion with engineering. He's making a point that, that they already have one other candidate there that they could go into sharing for those improvements. I don't see a lot of foot traffic there generated, so I'm open to that. As far as the parking is concerned, I think the parking issue was adequately addressed and answered with number of employees. I think they have enough parking based on what the testimony that I heard tonight.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I'd just like to point out that they did answer pretty good on the parking. That was one of my biggest hangups. But if it's between 65 to 85 employees per shift, that should meet. And then again, I'm glad and happy to see that almost 3 times the required amount of landscaping is being put out there. I like seeing more landscaping instead of just something wide open without color. I think the landscaping will definitely help. And by being 3 times the required amount, it's nice to see.
Great.
So Commissioner Hubai, so I'd like to invite you to make a motion and just address the issue about 53 and 58.
Okay, 53 and 58.
That's the
That was
deferred-
on the original, that was on the original
yeah.
conditions of approval.
Oh, that's
53 and 50. What is your view, Mr. Vice Chair, regarding the deferred improvement agreement?
Yeah, I don't have any issue with deferring the improvements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make a motion that, let's see, we're on number 3. What is the PC resolution number for this number 3?
This would be 2022-9.
2022-9. My motion is to approve PC Resolution 2022-9 and adopt Site and Architectural Review 2021-5 with the amendment to the conditions that we also include the original conditions number 53 and 50. What numbers were there?
53 and 58.
53 and 58 from the original approved approval for the original conditions, that we include those with the 160.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Am I clear on my motion?
I think so.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure Eve is clear.
Yes, I understand the motion. I
Okay.
am going to state for the record that this is going to be including conditions 53 and 58 from minors. I believe the numbers are minor subdivision 2018-2 and site and architectural review 2018-6. But that was the Felipe 9 project. This is a different project, so we will have to amend these conditions if they conflict with those conditions from that other project. Yes?
Great, thank you, Eva.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
So I know we don't have a second yet, so I'm just going to continue to comment. So I believe the applicant said that he was okay with the conditions of approval as they are today. Was that your understanding?
Yes, with the exception of the deferred improvement agreement that was part of the original set of conditions.
That's what you heard the applicant.
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay. All right. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 4, minor subdivision 2018-6, site and architectural review 2018-23, extension Right 13 LLC. The applicant is requesting an extension for approved minor subdivision 2018-6 and site and architectural review 2018-23 to subdivide a 13.19 acre parcel into 4 lots consisting of 4.25 acres, 4.01 acres, 4.07 acres, and 0.86 acres. The approval includes site and architectural approval to construct approximately 340,000 square feet of indoor greenhouse buildings for a cannabis cultivation facility on existing agricultural land, including on-site parking and all utility connections, drainage, and landscape improvements. The project site is located at Wright Road and San Felipe Road in the North Gateway zoning district, further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel Number 053-350-005, CEQA Mitigated Negative Declaration. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you. This item is minor subdivision 2018-6 and site and architectural review 2018-23 for an extension of time request. This was a previously approved project located north of Wright Road and west of San Felipe Road, as you can see on your screen. It is for the subdivision of a 13.19 acre parcel into 4 individual lots, as well as the construction of 340,000 square feet approximately of cannabis greenhouse buildings. 3 total buildings are proposed. It is in the North Gateway zoning district. The Planning Commission adopted Resolution 2019-45 approving the minor subdivision, as well as Resolution 2019-46 approving the site and architectural review back on September 26th of 2019. And then at the regular meeting of August 26, 2021, the Planning Commission adopted Resolution 2021-24, approving a 1-year extension for minor subdivision 2018-6 and SNA 2018-23. And the project is set to expire on September 26th of 2022, based on that extension. As mentioned, the proposal that was approved was for subdividing the parcel into 4 lots. Parcel A, B, and C are a little over 4 acres each, and parcel D is proposed for stormwater retention at the top of your screen at the northmost side of the parcel, and that's 37,637 square feet. The parcels A and B are consistent with all of our minimum dimensions for lot size, depth, width, and frontage for the North Gateway as found in 1708-020 of the zoning ordinance. However, proposed parcels B and D do not have any frontage on a public road, so these would be non-conforming with that section. And then parcel D also is proposed to have a 65.79 foot in-depth dimension, which would also be inconsistent with the minimum depth requirement of 100 feet for the North Gateway per that same section of zoning code. The project site has access from 2 driveway entrances on Wright Road. There is also a proposed emergency vehicle access that crosses the property to the north of this parcel and accesses via a right in, right out proposed on San Felipe Road. There is ADA access crossing parcels A and B from the sidewalk of Wright Road, as well as one coming in from Greenhouse C, though there is no pedestrian access crossing in between the proposed parcels. There are some inconsistencies in the plan set. So, and as I get into the recommendation tonight, we would like to clarify those inconsistencies with the applicant. As you can see on this site plan page, and there's another, I believe there are fences proposed along the property lines, but then there are also site plan pages in the plan that's provided showing drive access crossing those fences. So one of the things that we would like to clarify with the applicant is circulation of this site for further review. One of the other potential items for consideration with this project site is that it is located within the North Gateway zoning district, and part of the general plan as well as the zoning ordinance requires coordination of parcels. There was a circulation analysis prepared for the proposed site plan with some commentary from Kimley Horn that was prepared in 2021 by our previous director, but there are some issues that were identified in that memo that we would need to address as well pertaining to the site circulation. So it's difficult to make a determination as to whether this is consistent with some of the North Gateway circulation and access policies of our zoning code. One of the things, and this is something that was pointed out in the previous project as well, and as you know, these are greenhouses, so they're more uniform in proposed architecture. However, this site, unlike the previous project, has greenhouse A as well as C, which front onto Wright Road. So part of the consistency determination when reviewing this extension for consideration is whether it's consistent with our land use policies that do recommend and require enhanced elevations for the public right of way and view from Wright Road in particular. The east, north, and west elevations of C, B, and A as they face towards streets. There's also parcels in between, so screening those from public view more so. Here is greenhouse B, similar, almost exactly the same elevations as greenhouse A and the same orientation. And then greenhouse C, the actual south elevation is what faces towards Wright Road, which is the third from the top on this screen. Similar to the last project, cannabis greenhouses do not have a proposed parking ratio requirement in our land use code. So the Planning Commission can make a recommendation. This parcel is proposing 341,000 square foot of greenhouse and 55 total vehicle spaces on the plan set. 35 of those spaces are for parcel A and 10 each for parcels B and C. This ratio, we couldn't establish the ratio because we don't actually have the square footage of each of the buildings, but it's 55 over 341 is, I actually didn't have to do that math, but I can do it for you later if you'd like. But the Planning Commission, we would need a ratio. We do have a potential ratio that we discussed previously, so that could be something that the Planning Commission recommends that staff utilize when analyzing this project. One of the other items that staff has found to be inconsistent with our code in our review of this extension is the stormwater management proposal. They are proposing on the plans a basin, an above ground basin for stormwater retention or detention. This is inconsistent with section 1716-140, which does require underground stormwater facilities. And potentially that undergrounding could affect the site plan or the buildings once it's actually drawn onto the plans. So that could potentially change the site and architectural review that the Planning Commission would be extending tonight. As far as landscaping, there is an excess of percentage of landscaping, and some of our standard conditions would address landscaping as far as being compliant with our water efficiency and other points of our landscape code, but there are some tree proposals that are near driveways and access points, such as this one here and these ones, which might need to be moved. So staff would recommend that the plans have a little bit more detail, particularly on that. There is a tree also proposed in the EVA on the north here on this site plan. So staff, in consideration for the Planning Commission, is an extension of this item, but we've found that it appears to be inconsistent with several of our land use policies, in particular with the south elevations of A and C fronting onto Wright Road. They don't have those enhanced elevations and architectural variation and features that are part of the land use policy, and they are directly fronting onto public right-of-way. There's also no pedestrian and bicycle connectivity between the site as a whole, between the buildings, and it's not contributing to the connected transit network, whereas the San Felipe connection or the beautification plan. That's not part of the original conditions of approval on the project. So that would be something that staff would recommend consideration of by the Planning Commission. And the project as well is located in the North Gateway Commercial General Plan designation and is surrounded on all sides actually by other North Gateway commercial properties. And this proposed project does limit potential future vehicle and other access, particularly to sites to the east, west, and north, which may have very limited access to roads because they're surrounded by San Felipe Road and Highway 25. So one of the things that the Planning Commission might consider is a kind of half-street proposal or something along the project to give more access, which is in line with the North Gateway commercial connectivity goals and policies of the general plan and the zoning ordinance. As mentioned, we've also identified several sections of the municipal code that this original approved set of plans is inconsistent with, including lot dimensions and frontage, circulation, landscaping, stormwater, and parking. Unfortunately, this application came to staff in July. I believe it was July 13th. And so in order to review the plans and then make any potential amendments to help bring this more in line with our municipal code, the project application is going to expire on September 26th. So, and then the project is consistent with a previously prepared mitigative negative declaration. Nothing has changed since the approval. But one of the things that staff is recommending because of that time frame is that the staff or the Planning Commission adopt a 90-day extension of time for these two projects. And then essentially what that time will be used for is the applicant can make amendments to their plan to bring it more into consistency with the current code and general plan policies, and then we'll return the item for consideration of a time extension. So that is staff's recommendation tonight for this project.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the commission for staff? We'll open the public comment at 7:57.
Okay, Patrick Orozco, that's my first.
Thank you, commissioners. So this particular request is a bit more challenging than the last one, and part of the reason to acquiesce to the new conditions of approval was here we're not proposing any changes. The prior project was sufficiently different from the original application that it seemed like it was fair that we be required to bring certain things into conformance that are reasonable. In this case, we made an application to extend the project in March, and we were told at that time that we could not. We had already received 2 extensions, and that the city's code only allowed 2, and the city could not extend it for another year. We debated that issue with the help of the new city attorney, and were able to reach agreement that, in fact, you do have the discretion to extend it, and so we burned 3 months until June, just debating whether or not we had the right to extend. The ask here is very simple. We spent 2 years negotiating the proposed project with your predecessors and colleagues, extensive conversations in detail. Some of the issues that are being identified now are the same issues that had already come up, and a decision was made to advance the project with the full support of the Planning Commission, the staff, and the City Council. Because we are not asking for a change, we would like consideration of the Planning Commission providing clarity to staff as to whether or not projects that were previously approved through a full environmental impact report and very significant vetting be allowed to continue in their current state. The comments that Ava and staff make are totally well-founded. I understand that there are many differences between what was previously approved and nuances to current policy. But redesigning the project accomplishes the opposite of what we're trying to do here. We're in a tough position with macroeconomic changes and headwinds working against us. The cannabis industry is in duress, in adding costs and time to bring a project forward that I can bring to market with prospective tenants. You'll notice the type of buildings here that are represented are intentionally of different size than the giant project on Felipe, because there are different tenants that do different things in the space. The more time that we add to the process, the more expense, the further we get from the probability of any success. And so I understand that if we come back requesting changes, I propose a warehouse instead of a greenhouse. We want smaller buildings. We want to change the parcel size. Fair game. We understand that we may be required to make additional improvements. The bone of contention historically has been stormwater. At this point, our relationship with staff is super important. We depend on everyone here and have to maintain a good working relationship. So if conceding that point allows us to proceed with the rest of the project as proposed, we will do that, but it will add expense, and it would be better to agree that the project has opaque fencing throughout. It's the storm drain surface detention has been thoroughly vetted, including commissioning reports to satisfy the ADA about standing water and birds, flying into the flight path. It's totally invisible from anyone other than ourselves, and very far off the road. So as to help us all understand what the commission wants to see, this comes back to the question of, are projects that have previously been entitled that are asking for an extension on that entitlement because there have been setbacks going to be held to a brand new standard based on the passage of time? Or is it like pulling a building permit under the old code, that if you keep that permit active, you're not having to completely redesign the project and adhere to a higher standard? So if the commission would like to see us redesign the project to include underground stormwater, we're happy to do so. But I would ask humbly that you please direct staff to not make us completely redesign the project to address the myriad of issues that I don't disagree are inconsistent with some of the other policies that the city has since adopted. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Orozco? Okay. Do we have another speaker?
Yes, Gary Coates.
Excuse me, Mr. Vice Chair. Mr. Roscoe, regarding so you're showing at the north there, you're showing a detention basin. And I know that currently we require storm water to be underground. If we decide to go along with our current standards, you would comply with that?
As to the storm drain detention basin, because I know that it's really important to staff. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Coates.
Mr. Vice Chair, members of the Commission, Gary Coates here again on behalf of Right 13. I won't go over the items Patrick has mentioned to you. I think he's answered all of those. I did want to comment on a couple issues. One of them is the overall circulation question that was raised by staff. Originally, there was a thought of a a half-street section on the western boundary of the project site. That was eventually determined not to be the appropriate location for a roadway area, and that we had the setback from that area in order to meet fire code requirements with the fire marshal. And we looked at an overall circulation pattern, and I have copies of that I can supply to staff, that there was another direction of a road that comes up further to the north, comes off of San Felipe, connects over to Briggs, and goes in through the back area that gave the solution of circulation in that area. I'll provide that for staff during the time period, but that was how we resolved it at the time. And the site plan that you see was actually a composite program that we worked out with engineering from the city at the time, and also with the fire marshal to ensure fires access to all sides of the building. We had to have certain widths, etc. So we did that throughout the entire parcel. So that when we did develop this, there was a very cohesive thought as to overall circulation, to fire protection, and the visual. We tried to vary, which is tough to do with a large greenhouse building, to be very frank. It's hard to vary your elevations and your requirements with respect to the visual character from the site. But what we did is turn buildings so that we had one that was shorter frontage on Wright Avenue, then the second one had a larger frontage on there, and then staging one behind it. So we didn't have one massive building along the whole thing, and then set back one a little bit further than the other to give some articulation, as limited as that can be with such large buildings. But we wanted to do that in order to try to address the use requirements, but also the visual characteristic requirements in the North Gateway zone area. So that was our approach to dealing with those issues. As Patrick had mentioned, one of the things that we were hoping is that with all of the things that we've done, we've tried to keep the cost of this effective so that we can get this going. The parking situation, I think Eva has mentioned it very well. It's the same shift patterning in the sense of square footage and square footage requirements. We've overparked this almost double, but that's fine, because there's some times where if you have a massive grow area cycle come around, we could have those 80 people there versus 65, or in this case, 120 people all told could be there at one time for 3 shifts at the whole size of the building. So we've done that, we've handled that. What we'd like to request is that if the city was in an agreement with a motion, we would concur with the 90-day extension. We think that would help us deal with staff, resolve some of the issues. But what we'd love to do is, and we wrote this out just as a suggestion to the commission, and I'll read that if it's appropriate, Mr. Vice Chair. It's a short comment. And that is a motion of the City of Hollister Planning Commission to grant a 90-day extension, substituting the original project conditions of approval. In other words, we'd like to maintain those original project approvals on this project because of the nature of the scale and the size, for those proposed by the staff, with addition of conditions to update the stormwater management plan subject to the city engineer approval. So we ensured that if an undergrounding is a requirement, we could do that. It's there in that require process. And so that's what we would like to do. And for reference, the original project conditions of approval were approved by the City of Planning Commission on September 26, 2019 in Resolution PC 2018-06 and SNA PC Resolution 2018-23. So that was what we would like to request, is that we maintain the original conditions that be given to staff to use those. We will come back and try to facilitate our plan in any way we possibly can to try to address some of the issues. But we want you to be aware that with respect to elevation and architecture, it's a very difficult thing, as I say, with a large greenhouse building to try to change elevations, heights, because they come in panels and constructions, and so you just don't change one to the other as much as we'd all like to be able to, shall we say, reduce massing on that project site. So, but there will be a solid fence because we have to do that for security reasons. There'll be landscaping, which we're again looking at least double to triple the amount of landscape requirements, so that we can hopefully then defray some of that visual impact that might occur within the road area. So that would be our request of you, Mr. Vice Chair, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those for you.
Okay. Any questions for Mr. Coates?
Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have any more speakers?
I have no more speaker cards. Hang on one second. I have no hands raised in the virtual audience.
Okay, we'll close the public input at 8:09.
Mr. Vice Chair, I will say on one of the items that was brought up regarding pedestrian circulation around the buildings, I do know that, in fact, this has been something that I've been familiar with on my projects, is that they require pedestrian ADA circulation around all buildings, as far as I know. And I think that would be subject to confirmation from Four Leaf, but I think that's a building code requirement, and I think you need to either address it now or you're going to address it in the future when it goes through plan review. I think on the aesthetics, I've already made my comments regarding the previous project. It applies to this one.
Okay. So, what are your thoughts on the previous conditions that that the project was approved under previous conditions, and now there's new conditions being proposed?
Well, some of the new conditions, regarding, for one, is I think the major one is that when they did the subdivision, it was that narrow one in the north was designated for like a bioswale or, detention, but now we've had a lot of discussion on that, and what we require now, again, is to have that stormwater underground. I think I'm not an expert on that, but I think undergrounding the stormwater, I think is a good thing. If I wish, it would be nice to have Public Works here tonight, someone representative, but I don't think it's worth our time to to go back and continue that conversation that we've had extensive conversation on that underground stormwater detention or the bioswales and having it left like it was on the original proposal. We've heard testimony that the applicant is willing to consider going underground with that. I think that, that there is, I looked into the municipal code, that they do have that option to add conditions, when the project is either delayed or for whatever circumstance. Some of those conditions, I think, are probably good. I don't think it's within our purview to go through all the new ones and compare it with the old ones, but I'll say this. I think that 90-day, I would be in favor of approving a 90-day extension for this minor subdivision and working with staff the best you can to come up with something that would achieve a commonality between staff and you, and to work on something that would hopefully move the project along and not create, any more long delays that would make it less feasible and economically viable.
Any other comments? Okay, I agree with the point the applicant is making about how things were approved before, and now a lot of things are being changed.
Yes.
And I think I understand the city's maybe trying to update the policies moving forward, but I don't think someone who's been an applicant who's been acting in good faith should be kind of penalized, because the applicants can't always move forward right away because of economic conditions. So I think it's fair to hold them to the previous standard. With that being said, I think they have stated they're willing to update or to work with the city engineer about the water. So I would like to go ahead and make a motion that we make a motion that we grant a minimum 90-day extension and reaffirm the original project minor subdivision and conditions of approval as approved by the City of Hollister Planning Commission on September 26, 2019. Minor subdivision 2018-6 and site and architectural 2018-23, resolutions number 2019-45 and 2019-46, along with resolution 2021-24 for a 1-year extension with the addition of condition to update the stormwater management plan subject to the city engineer approval.
Vice Chair Henderson, could I ask you to clarify, you said minimum of 90-day extension? And I think for staff that might be a little confusing because the minimum of 90 days then means essentially forever.
To clarify, make it a 90-day extension.
Thank you.
Strike minimum.
Strike minimum.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any should have been doing this before. Any further discussion on the motion? Okay, we can go to a roll call vote.
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. You guys want to recess?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's take a 5-minute recess.
Oh, good. I went down there and Eva had to wait for me. But like, even if I like. They are. Well, you know what I need is a footstool. Yeah. That's what we need is footstools. Yeah. Maybe I'll have them order. Yeah. That leg pain. Yeah.
Sometimes I sit cross-legged in my chair in the office.
I was thinking about doing that right now, yeah. Like, you guys have to go and do your research and base it off how much canopy, how much of. If you have like, you know, whatever the 1,000 square feet of just the canopy, it's only one employee maybe, you know, but they have to put in these calculations and educate everybody on it. Yeah. And bring. I should have been in those conversations.
To modify the residential land use designations in the current Hollister 2005 through 2023 general plan, to modify how density is calculated from net density to gross density, and amend the Hollister zoning ordinance to modify the existing definition of density and replace the use of net density with gross density throughout the zoning ordinance citywide. CEQA, consistent with the final environment impact report for the 2005 through 2023 general plan. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, this will be Erica Fraser.
During the June 23rd Planning Commission public hearing, the Planning Commission directed staff to bring back a discussion of how the city should calculate density at a future date. Staff followed that up with a study session with the Planning Commission on August 5th. And we discussed the topic of density and how the city should calculate density. At that meeting, the Planning Commission directed staff to make any necessary modifications to require the city to review the density of residential development on a gross, not net basis. Following the Planning Commission's direction, staff is now bringing back to you a general plan amendment as well as zoning ordinance amendments to ensure that we are reviewing the density of residential project as gross moving forward. As part of that, 2 amendments will be required to the general plan. On pages 2.7 and 2.8, for all residential categories, we need to remove the word net and replace it with gross. Those are the only 2 modifications to the current general plan. As far as the zoning ordinance goes, there are several amendments that need to be made related to density. One is deleting the existing definition of density and replacing it with one that defines gross density as the number of primary residential dwellings per acre of land within the total project site. In several sections of the residential zoning districts, we need to remove the word net and replace it with gross, consistent with those general plan amendments we just discussed. And then in table 17.04-2, again, we have to remove the word net. And then there are 2 more sections of the code where we have to remove net again so that we can ensure that we're reviewing it based on gross. While looking at these amendments, staff also identified several ones that should be fixed now. One is in relation to the table 17.04-2, and this amendment is proposed in relation to a public speaker comment that was received during this study session, as well as some comments from the Planning Commission. And that's to add a note at the end of this table to say, where the minimum lot size conflicts with the density established under the general plan, the density in the general plan shall take precedence. While reviewing the zoning ordinance amendments, staff found that there is an error in the existing zoning ordinance related to the allowable density for R3, and we're proposing to change it to be in conformance with the general plan. In the land use type of table 17.04-1, there's a category for small lot housing. There's no definition of small lot housing. We're not sure what that is, so we recommend just taking it out at this time while we're already doing these amendments. And then we'd also like to change duplexes from not permitted to allowed with a site and architectural review. That would make it more in compliance with Senate Bill 9, which we discussed at that study session, and then that would have to be amended anyways for compliance with Senate Bill 9, so we'd like to just do it now. So the proposed modifications to the general plan and the zoning ordinance will clarify how we review density and will require residential density to be reviewed on a gross basis. This allows the city to determine the overall development potential of a site without detailed plans being drawn up. And staff has also proposed those additional modifications I discussed that are related to residential development for clarity and to correct errors in the zoning ordinance. The proposed modifications are consistent with the final environmental impact report adopted for the Hollister general plan, because that EIR did review development on a gross basis. And staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt 2 resolutions tonight. One is a resolution recommending City Council approval of a general plan amendment as discussed and outlined in the resolution, and the adoption of a resolution recommending City Council approval of a zoning ordinance amendment as discussed and outlined in the resolution. And that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions for staff? Could you clarify, I think in your presentation you said our study session was August 5th, but the minutes say it was August 4th.
Oh, it's August 4th.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I think we can go ahead and open the public comment at 8:32. Do we have any speakers?
I have no speaker cards. Let me just see. And we are alone on the Zoom, so no Zoom.
Okay, so we'll close the public comment at 8:32. All right, what are any comments from the commission?
Yeah, good job on that. I'm glad to see it tonight.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, just yes, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah, they did a good job. So
So let's see. Is it my turn? Sure. Oh, I gotta find the agenda here. Here we are. Oh, what is it here? Can I borrow your agenda? I don't know what I did with it. Okay, so, what is the item here on the agenda to make a motion? I'm missing a page.
It's item 5.
it's gonna be 5.
Item 5, so.
Oh, yeah, okay,
let's
got it,
see,
okay.
The draft amendment, general plan draft amendment, PC resolution
This will be 2022-10.
2022-10, and general plan amendment 2021-1, and zoning ordinance amendments related to density to approve this draft tonight and move it to the city council. Pass it along to the city council for approval.
Okay.
Okay.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we can go to a roll call vote.
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. Is it this one? I've got so many papers over here, I don't know what I did with it. We'll do it after the meeting.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item 6.
Sorry.
Vice Chair Henderson?
Yes.
If I could, staff would request, if possible, a resolution for the general plan amendment, which was just adopted, and then as well as a resolution recommending the zoning ordinance amendment, if that is the pleasure of the commission.
Oh, separate motions?
Yes, please, if
Yeah.
possible.
Okay.
Thank you.
Because I think you just said general amendment the first time.
Yes. So the general plan amendment,
So the numbers are both 22-1 or 2022-1 for the general plan amendment 2022-1 and the zoning ordinance amendment 2022-1. Sorry about that. I don't think it's in our title quite right.
so we need a separate motion for the general plan amendment. Okay.
No, I think we already did that.
Yeah, we did the general plan amendment, so we would just need a motion to also recommend the zoning ordinance amendments to the council as well.
I thought I said it, but I'll make a motion to approve the zoning ordinance amendment related to density. 2022-1, same number,
Yeah.
and pass it to the city council for approval.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote.
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, moving on to item 6, tentative map 2021-3, conditional use permit 2021-10 for a planned unit development, Stonebridge Homes / Hugh Walker. The applicant is requesting a vesting tentative map and conditional use permit for a planned unit development approval to subdivide 9.3 acres into 101 lots. The subdivision would create 100 new residential single family detached lots and a parcel for stormwater treatment. The property has a general plan designation of medium density residential and is within the medium density residential performance overlay R3-M/PZ zoning district. Site and architectural review is not part of the application. The project is located at 1070 Buena Vista Road, north of Buena Vista Road, west of West Side Boulevard, and south of West Side Road, further identified as San Benito County Assessor Parcel Number 019-120-005. CEQA mitigated negative declaration previously prepared. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Henderson. As mentioned, this item is for tentative map 2021-3, as well as a conditional use permit for planned development. This item was heard at the June 23rd, 2022 Planning Commission meeting, and it was continued due to the density issue between net and gross density, which was the item that was discussed at the August 4th study session, as well as we just previously heard an item on that general plan amendment. So the project is back before you tonight for consideration again. This is a subdivision to create 100 single-family lots on 9.33 acres. The project site was annexed into the city in 2020. It's located at 1070 Buena Vista Road, just north of Buena Vista Road, across the street from Calaveras School. Here's an image of the site area as well, kind of a little bit west of West Side Boulevard and Buena Vista Road. The existing conditions on the site, it is mostly vacant. There is an existing house which is proposed to be demolished as part of the mitigated negative declaration that was prepared for the pre-zoning. This was determined to not be historically significant. And as far as housing element and those types of things, we'll be losing 1 unit but adding 100. So there's no issues there as far as RENA numbers or anything goes. Here is the site plan. The project has its main access off of Buena Vista Road, and then we'll have 2 points of access off of West Side Road to the north, which is on the right side of your screen. All the roads are proposed to be private within this development. They have bulb outs to slow traffic, 10 foot wide lanes in either direction, and parking on either side in between the bulb outs and private driveways. But again, these will all be privately maintained roads as well as privately maintained stormwater detention. Here is the tentative map itself in more detail with the lot numbers. As mentioned at the August 4th, 2022 Planning Commission study session, there was a recommendation to move forward with a general plan and zoning amendment to allow for gross density calculation rather than net. And as we just heard, the Planning Commission has recommended that move forward to the council. So this project is calculated to 10.7 dwelling units per acre of gross density. So it is consistent with the 8 to 12 units per acre, which is allowed in the medium density performance overlay. And a condition has been placed on the project. I've included the text here, but essentially this condition requires that prior to the recordation of this final map and these lots and this layout at this gross density be finalized and recorded, the city will have to adopt that general plan amendment. And this condition also states that if the city does not adopt that general plan amendment, if the council does not change to a gross density calculation, this project will have to come back before the Planning Commission if they do any amendments to meet the current code, which is a net density calculation as it currently reads. So either this will be approved under the gross density, which will be in the new general plan via the amendments and in the new zoning code, so it will be consistent with that density, or it will come back to you for consideration under a net calculation of some kind. So again, as conditioned, it will be consistent with the general plan and zoning when the map is recorded, or it will not be recorded. It is at 10.7 dwelling units per acre gross density. There is a request for a conditional use permit for planned development, which allows for flexibility in the standards. They are requesting a minimum lot size ranging from 2,600 square feet to 3,430 square feet. And they are also requesting a reduction in some of the setbacks and lot coverage requirements, including a front yard setback reduction, and then a slight increase to the max lot coverage to 55%, a decrease in the minimum lot depth to 65 feet, and then a decrease in the minimum width to 40 feet. The proposed density is the minimum lot size 2,600. That's consistent with what's allowed already in the performance overlay zone. That does allow the Planning Commission to make a lot size reduction down to 2,500 square feet. The subdivision is consistent with the Buena Vista traffic calming projects that are going on, as well as will, under standard conditions, improve its frontage to be consistent with Buena Vista Road requirements and standards and efforts. None of the lots are fronting Buena Vista Road. They're all facing interiorly, so they won't have any additional driveways onto that road. They are not providing any public open space, so they will pay park dedication impact fees as part of their approval. Private maintenance of internal roadways. However, there is a condition for CFD 4 annexation, which will cover the cost of anything that is publicly maintained. In this case, it will be limited to improvements on Buena Vista that the city will maintain, as well as on West Side Road to the north. Everything inside of the site is going to be under an HOA. Again, this is consistent with the mitigated negative declaration and the mitigation measures that have been incorporated into the resolution, ensure that there's no significant impacts from this project to the environment. It is our recommendation tonight that the Planning Commission therefore adopt a resolution approving the tentative map 2021-3, subject to the draft findings and conditions, as well as adopt a resolution approving conditional use permit 2021-10 for a planned unit development, also subject to the findings and conditions in the draft.
Thank you. Any questions for staff?
The condition, I think it was number 4 that you mentioned.
I believe it's 4.
Would that go with the tentative map application?
Yes, so it's placed on the tentative map resolution, and then the conditional use permit, as well as the tentative map, have a resolution or a condition of approval referencing each other.
Okay.
So you mentioned a possible scenario where the city council is gonna have the proposed municipal code changes and general plan modification brought before them, and then you're saying if they potentially say no, then this project would have to come back before us?
Potentially. So what staff understands, the question that came up in June was that on this item, as well as another item, is that our code doesn't clearly identify what is contained in a net density calculation and what is not contained in a net density calculation. So this project, you could calculate the net density. I believe it was calculated previously to around 11.2 units per net acre, but that net acre is the question, and that calculation is based on not including private roads. So if this could potentially come back and say, this is how we'd like to calculate it. We'd like to not include private roads, and the Planning Commission could accept that net calculation. Or the Planning Commission could potentially say that net density needs to be calculated by subtracting out all roads, or potentially just curb to curb, or back of sidewalk to back of sidewalk. And all of that changes potentially the density, which is why we're recommending a gross density change. However, if the city council doesn't make that change before this project is ready to record that map, we'll have to bring it to the Planning Commission, and they'll have to say that this map is also consistent with net density before it can record.
If the applicant, and there's another item too that this is subject to, if the applicant decides to, let's say, modify his project to conform to net density, what would be the definition of what he needs to subtract? Would it be curb to curb, or would it be back of sidewalk, including the street and sidewalk?
That's exactly the question. So I think to not hopefully stray too far from the subject at hand, but we're dealing with that on another project, on where to draw that line and what net calculation to come and present to the Planning Commission. But it isn't clear in the code. So ultimately, that reading of the code will be the Planning Commission's discretion on how we calculate net under the current code and general plan. And they'll have to conform to the Planning Commission's direction on that.
So what's the mechanism that causes the project to come back to us if the city council doesn't approve the gross density calculation? Is it do you have a condition of approval in this resolution?
So this resolution, the condition that we've proposed specifically says if the city does not amend the general plan and zoning ordinance to allow for gross density calculation prior to the expiration of this approval identified in condition of approval number 1, this project approval shall be voided. A reduction in the number of units/lots shall be considered a significant change and not in substantial conformance with this map approval and would require reconsideration by the Planning Commission. So essentially, this is written in such a way that if that gross density calculation isn't approved, and which again is the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it is ultimately the City Council's decision. If it is not approved, staff wants this project to come back before you. So essentially what will happen is we're going to work with the applicant under this current application. We're not going to make them apply for amendments or anything, but we will work with them and then bring a presentation to you on how we either have modified or how we are arguing that this application as proposed also meets net. But we want the Planning Commission to tell us that they concur that this meets a net density calculation before we record this map.
Okay. Yeah, if the applicant's going to comment, I'd like to understand what their timeline is. And I'd also like to understand what is the timeline for the proposed municipal code and general plan changes? Like, when is it going to go before the City Council?
Sure, I can definitely speak to the second. As you saw, staff is working on this as quickly as we can. Our intent is to bring that ordinance and general plan amendment for a first reading at the September, I believe it is the 19th City Council meeting. That's our intent. Otherwise, it'll be the October, the first reading and the first meeting of October. So we're moving as quickly as we can because it is a simple amendment language change, doesn't require more CEQA or anything like that. So we're hoping to have a read on the council and their thoughts at that first reading relatively soon.
Okay. And is there anything, so in the past, for past projects, would you agree that you've basically been using gross density, even though the language said net, but the fact, isn't it true that you have been using gross density for several projects?
I would say that yes, some projects have been approved and their density would only meet a gross calculation, and some projects have been approved and their density would only meet a net calculation, and some have been approved that meet both. So it really hasn't been consistent in the past.
Okay. So is there any reason why we couldn't just say that we just want to go to, is there any reason why we can't, as a commission, say that we would like this project to just be considered as from the gross density calculation, and that be final. It doesn't matter what the city council rules on the municipal code and general plan.
So I don't think you could approve based purely on gross density, because that isn't how the current code and general plan reads. With that being said, the project is consistent with their proposed calculation of net density, which is to only exclude from the acreage public improvement right of way. And so if the Planning Commission wants to find that they, under the current code, want to calculate net using public improvement or excluding only public improvements, so private drives and private roads would still be counted towards your acreage that you can use for your density calculation, this project would be consistent with that reading of net.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Okay, we'll go ahead and open the public comment at 8:53. Do we have any speakers?
I do. Chris Patton.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Chris Patton. I am the civil engineer for Stonebridge Homes on this project at Woodall. The intent of the applicant is to submit improvement plans and a final map as soon as we can. They are prepared and ready to go. We envision that it will take 3 to 4 months to go through the process of plan review with city staff, and during that time we would see it running in parallel the approval of the changes to the general plan and zoning. So that's our intent, and if you had any other questions on the project, I'm happy to answer them.
Any questions for the applicant?
No.
Okay, do we have any other speakers?
I have no other speaker cards. Let me just make sure we're still alone here. It looks like we are. No more speakers.
Okay, we'll close the public comment at 8:54. All right, what are the thoughts of the commission?
I'd like to go along with what is proposed tonight with the condition number 4, knowing, well, it's anticipating that gross density will be embraced as in the general plan and also by the city council regarding this project. So if there's any other contention or discussion, I'd like to make a motion. I guess 2 motions, right? You got a tentative map and a conditional use permit?
Yes. 2 motions, 2 draft resolutions are prepared.
With the PC resolution being?
Our PC resolution number is going to be 2022-12.
I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Vice Chair, to approve PC resolution 2022-12 and adopt tentative map 2021-3 with the draft conditions, including condition number 4 regarding the density, gross density.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
And then to carry on, I'd like to make another motion to approve PC resolution 2022-13 and adopt conditional use permit 2021-10 with the inclusion of the condition 4.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second? I'll go ahead and second. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay. All right, thank you. See, scrolling down. on the agenda. So we'll move on to new business. Joint study, item 1 under new business is joint study session. Staff to provide information to the Planning Commission regarding potential joint study sessions of the Planning Commission and City Council. Do we have a staff report?
Yes, just a brief update here. Staff has been talking with the city attorney's office about the possibility of going over the responsibilities of the Planning Commission and City Council. At the previous City Council meeting, the City Council recommended to hold a joint study session with the Planning Commission and the council members on Thursday, September 1st, 2022 at 6 p.m. It'll be here in the chambers. Our intent with this is to kind of have again, going over the roles and responsibilities of the commission and city council, kind of the processes that are within planning in particular, going over that with everyone. And then staff would also like, at that study session, we'll say this as well, but we'd like to hold future joint study sessions, or if the council doesn't want to do joint study sessions, staff would like to hold study sessions with the Planning Commission on a regular basis, because we are currently, as we talked about at the August 4th, there's a lot of zoning amendments and just other items that might come up for discussion, and a study session offers that opportunity to kind of freely discuss potential projects or potential things that we'd like to have some questions answered before we're drafting full ordinances or full resolutions. So we are recommending, and we will recommend at this joint study session as well, a time frame potentially for the second Thursday of each month, depending on the majority of everyone's availability. But for now, there is definitely going to be a joint study session on September 1st. So we are hoping that the Planning Commission might be available, but that was the date that the council has chosen for their availability, which is next Thursday, I believe. Yeah, so that was kind of this new business item, and more to be discussed at that session itself. But I'd happy to answer any questions about it that I can.
I'm available.
Great.
I think I can make it.
How about you, Luke?
Okay.
We'll record it, I'm sure.
Okay, yeah.
You can, since you're not going to make any decisions, you can remote in. You can, yeah, if you'd like. Yeah, you can remote in, yeah. I was thinking about it. Oh, okay. Well, then be safe.
Okay, any further discussion about the joint study session?
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
Was that going to be on a monthly basis?
So nothing is officially scheduled. I think depending on what the council says, we might either schedule kind of tentatively a few months out of joint study sessions, or staff will come back to you at the next planning commission and see if we can set something up just with the commissioners, if it isn't the council's want and the planning commission's want to do regular joint sessions. But staff does think it'll be beneficial, in particular for the planning process and all of the kind of long-term things that we have going on. And with a little bit more staff, we've been able to actually get to some of those items. So we'd like to pick this up with the commission at a minimum. That is going to be our recommendation. Yeah, the second Thursday. That way, because planning commission's on the fourth Thursday. That way we're not meeting every week. And it also, for the council, they're on the first and third Monday. So hopefully that's going to limit them having multiple meetings a week, except for with the rare instance of the 5 Mondays or 5 Thursdays month. So it gets a little bit off. But.
Okay, I think we can move on to old business. Is there any old business?
I have no old business.
Okay, moving on to planning department reports. Does planning department have any report?
I don't believe I have any reports. Adriana, do you have any reports?
I have nothing to report.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to planning commission reports. Is there anything the the commission would like to report? I would like to ask a question if it's okay. I'm curious, why don't we have the 5th planning commissioner? What's the delay? And also, is there anything we can do as a planning commission to help get another commissioner here? If I may ask.
I don't know that the council has, I don't know if we've gotten applications, but I don't know that the council has kind of wanted to move forward. We could see if it's something that the city manager, maybe the city clerk could bring up to them and see if we can kickstart that process again. We're missing who are we missing? District 4, right? Yeah, District 4.
I think we're missing 3, District 3.
Oh, yes. Commissioner Corona is District 4. Yes, District 3, yeah.
Yeah.
But it potentially could get weird just with election season as well, because we could lose people again. But I can definitely talk to the clerk and see if that's something that could be brought up.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe we should just wait.
We'll wait, yeah.
You can ask on Thursday.
Elections and all that, yeah.
You can ask next week. On Thursday, you'll be in the same room
Oh,
with the city
okay.
council.
That's a good point. We can ask what's going on.
Which is
maybe
what prompted us to
right.
want that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that concludes the planning commission reports. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll move to adjourn.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call vote.
Commissioner David Huboy,
Yes.
Vice Chair Kevin Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Luke Corona.
Yes.
The motion carries.
Okay. Thank
We're
you,
adjourned.
everyone.
Thank you.
Great job. Great job.